Hello everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel Buddha Affirmation. Here every story has a purpose and every lesson is meant to help you grow in a life. So let's dive into a new story that will teach us a deep lesson about happiness. So let's start the story. Once upon a time, in a small village, there was a young man named William who was always sad and downhearted. No matter how beautiful the weather was, no matter how happy the people around him seemed, William always found something to be upset about. His face was constantly gloomy, and his words were filled with disappointment and sorrow. The villagers would try to cheer him up, but his response was always remain the same. There is no place for happiness in my life. William's family was deeply worried about him. His mother would encourage him to stay positive, and his father would try to offer advice, but nothing seemed to work. William believed that life was nothing but pain, struggle, and suffering. But one day, Gautam Buddha visited the village. The villagers respected him a lot because they had heard that he helped people solve their life's problem. William's mother decided to send him to see Buddha, hoping he could help her son find peace. At first, William refused to go, but after much persuasion from his mother, he finally agreed and went to meet Buddha. When William reached Buddha, Buddha listened to his story with great patience. After hearing William's tale of sadness and despair, Buddha gave him a special task and said, "You must go around the village and speak to every person. Listen to their problems, but remember, you can only stay with someone who has never been sad or upset in their life." William was puzzled by this task. It seemed odd to him, but he respected Buddha's wisdom and decided to follow his instruction. He started his journey through the village, thinking about who might fit the description of someone who had never known the sadness. William's first stop was to visit his friend, Jack. If anyone in the village seems to have a perfect life, it was Jack. He was always smiling, always cheerful, and nothing seemed to get him down. When William found Jack working in his garden, he hesitated before asking his question, but he gathered courage and said, "Hey Jack, can I ask you something?" Jack looked up with his usual bright smile and said, "Sure, William, what's on your mind?" William explained his task and then asked, "Have you ever been really sad? I mean, have you ever felt like everything was going wrong and you did not know how to make it better?" Jack's smile faded a bit as he thought about the question and then said, "Of course, I have been sad. Everyone has tough times. My family struggled with money for as long as I can remember. There were days when I did not know how we had get by. And last year, when my sister got sick, we were really worried." William was shocked. He had always thought of Jack as someone who had it all together, someone who never had to deal with hardship. "But you are always so happy. How can you stay positive when you have been through all that?" Jack shrugged. "I guess I just focus on the good things. Life is tough, but I have got my family, friends, and a beautiful days outside. It is not about pretending the bad stuff does not exist. It is about choosing to appreciate what's good in life." William left Jack's house feeling confused but thoughtful. Jack had not fit Buddha's instruction, but his perspective on life left William thinking. Maybe being happy was not about never having problems, it was about how you handle them. Next, William decided to visit the village shopkeeper, Mrs. Emma. She was always cheerful and greeted everyone with a warm smile. Surely, if anyone could claim to have a perfect life, it would be Mrs. Emma. When William entered the shop, Emma was her usual kind self. "Good morning, William. What brings you here today?" William smiled, though he still felt awkward about his task. "I am not here to shop today. I wanted to ask you something." Mrs. Emma gave him a full attention and asked, "What is it, dear?" William explained what Buddha had told him and asked, "Have you ever been really sad? Have you ever felt like there was no joy left in life?" Mrs. Emma smiled, softened, and she looked at William with understanding and said, "Oh, William, I have faced more sadness than you might think. My husband passed away many years ago, and I had to raise my children alone. There were days when I was not sure how I would make it through. But you know what? I found strength in my children, in my friends, and in this village." William was surprised and asked, "But you always seem so happy." Mrs. Emma nodded. Happiness is not about never feeling sad. It is about finding the joy in small things, even when life is tough. I learned that if I focus only on my sorrow, I would never notice the good things around me. William thanked Mrs. Emma and left the shop deep in thought. He was beginning to see a pattern. Everyone he spoke to had been through hardship, yet they chose to focus on the good in their lives. Now William decided to visit Mr. Harris, the old farmer who lived at the edge of the village. Mr. Harris was known for his wisdom, and many people came to him for his advice. When William arrived, Mr. Harris was sitting on his porch, gazing out at the fields, and then William said, "I have been thinking a lot about happiness and sadness, and I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead," Mr. Harris said, nodding for William to sit beside him. William explained his task and then asked, "Have you ever felt like life was too hard, like there was nothing to be happy about?" Mr. Harris chuckled. "Oh, many times. There have been years when the crops failed, when the rain did not come, and when I was not sure if you would make it through the season, and then life can be harsh." William frowned. "So, how do you stay happy when things are so difficult?" Mr. Harris looked out over the field and said, "Happiness is not about everything going perfectly. It is about appreciating what you have, even when things are not perfect. When the crops fail, I remind myself that I still have my health and my family. When the rain does not come, I think about the years when it did. If you focus too much on what's going wrong, you will miss out on the things that are going right." William sat quietly, absorbing Mr. Harris' words. It was becoming clear that everyone in the village had faced struggles, yet they found ways to remain hopeful. After visiting more villages and hearing their stories, William realized that no one had lived a life completely free of sadness. Everyone had their own challenges, losses, and hardship, but they each had a way of finding joy in their lives, despite all difficulties and worries. Finally, William returned to Buddha and said, "I spoke to everyone in the village, and no one has lived a life without sadness. But I learned something important. Even though everyone has problems, they find ways to be happy." Buddha smiled gently and said, "That is the lesson I wanted you to learn. Sorrow and problems are part of life, but happiness comes from how you choose to see the world. The more you focus on your sadness, the more it will grow. But if you look for the little joys, the moment of peace, you will find balance." William nodded, finally understanding. He had spent so much time focusing on his sadness that he had not noticed the good things in his life. Now he realized that happiness was not something that came from a perfect life. It came from appreciating the small blessing even in the midst of challenges. With Buddha's word in his mind, William returned to his daily life with a new perspective. He began to notice the beauty in simple things, the warmth of the sun on his face, the laughter of children playing in the village, and the kindness of a friend offering help. Slowly, his sadness began to lift, and he felt more at peace with the world around him. William realized that life would always have its ups and downs, but he resolved not to let these ups and downs overpower him. He understood that true happiness came from within, from how he chose to view the world. It was not about having a life without problems. It was about learning to find joy even in the toughest times. This story teaches that everyone has their own problems and difficulties, but how we choose to face them makes all the difference. Constant sadness comes from focusing only on what's wrong. But if we learn to see the little joy in life, our sorrow will begin to fade. Happiness is not about waiting for a perfect life, it is about appreciating the good in the life we already have. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy this video, hit like button, and for more such stories, subscribe to our channel. Thank you and stay positive.